This Christmas, there are more than 325,000 empty chairs in American homes, and one of them is my mother's. I just finished 14 days of quarantine down at Tara's Refuge, and because I had gone to Tulsa to help care for my 88-year-old mother, I think it was around November 14th, she noticed she had symptoms that resembled COVID, and so she drove herself to the urgent care, as she does, and got tested. And that night, my brother, who's a doctor, peeked on her chart and found that she was positive. So at first, it seemed like she had a mild case. She had symptoms like a cold, but within a week, she developed pneumonia, and that took her to the hospital for 3 days. And she rallied. She was on antibiotics and steroids and oxygen, and yeah, she rallied. And they sent her home prematurely, we think, but anyway, they sent her home. And she started to tank again. And so my sister and brother began caring for her. She didn't eat anything for 5 days. She only got out of bed to go to the bathroom. But she begged my sister and brother not to send her back to the hospital. And so they spent the long Thanksgiving weekend doing tag team care for my mom. Many of you have met Lisa and Michael, and you know that they're frontline healthcare workers with demanding jobs themselves. And so by Saturday, they were exhausted, and they started talking about putting Mom in assisted living. And I knew she would hate that. And I couldn't bear the thought of her dying in isolation, because with COVID, she would be in isolation. So I felt pulled to be there with her and to help her. And I also weighed the risks, not only to myself of going through travel and being around someone who had COVID, but also weighed the exposure to the community. We've been in isolation for over a year now. And also just the jobs that would have to be covered. But weighing all that up, I decided to go in with Venerable's blessing. And she sent me off with some very good advice. She said, send your mom off with love. And that really sustained me. By the time I arrived on Sunday night, my sister and brother and my mom had already had the hospice talk, and Mom was on board with that. They had already had many cries together and done the forgiving that they needed to do with each other. It was quite beautiful to hear about. If you knew my mother, you would know that she loved music. She played the flute and the piano. She sang in choirs. She loved opera and concerts, and she was artistic. She loved to paint and draw. She had a very artistic flair. She also made beautiful pies. My mother had a very loving quality about her, and that really came through in her last days. She worked for many years as a children's psychiatric nurse, and yeah, that loving quality was very present in her last days. Like many people, my mom had a very traumatic childhood, and so in her adult years, her coping mechanism was shopping and gambling. And unfortunately, she developed an addiction to gambling, and it was difficult for her. It created complications for her life and for our life as well. But I'm so grateful to the Dharma that Mom and I were on very good terms in the last decades, really. I think it was the meditation on the kindness of the mother that really turned my mind around, and I stopped blaming her for everything, every problem I had. Also, because she was 88, I had been doing meditations on the 9-point death meditation for a long time. And I think the meditation that helped me the most was mindfulness of the body. Thinking about the 32 aspects of the body, how they're impermanent, they're in the nature of suffering, they lack a self, and then applying that to people that I love. Still, I didn't know how I would go. It was like a big test. So I arrived late on a Sunday night, and on Monday, Mom slept most of the day, but when she was lucid, we had some short conversations. She wasn't talking much. Occasionally, I would find her talking to herself, and she would say things like, Did you get the lemons? And what about the patterns for the dresses? I just overheard these conversations, and in hindsight, I wonder if she was talking to maybe her sister or her mother who had predeceased her. I regret not asking her. That night, I cared for Mom on my own so that my siblings could catch up on sleep. And this was pretty scary because they have medical background that I don't. And so, getting her up to the bathroom, she weighs a lot. It would have been difficult. It was difficult. But mostly I was just trying to help her keep her oxygen on, and or giving her medications or sips of water or refreshing her chapstick. I checked on her that night about 3, well, it was 3 in the morning, and in the sweetest voice, she kind of looked up into the space and said, "Is today the day we go home?" Like that. And I was taken back. I wasn't quite sure I knew what she meant, but I said, "Well, that's entirely up to you, Mom. And if you want to stay, you can. And if you're ready to go, that's okay too." And she just got the most beautiful childlike grin on her face and went back to sleep. So the next morning, my brother and sister stopped by on their way to work, and Michael went in to check on Mom, and a few minutes later he came out and he said, "Today's the day." Caring for a terminally ill person is all-consuming, and of course, we were all wearing full PPE and being extremely vigilant with hygiene. And the hospice nurse who'd been there that day said that Mom could go on like this for weeks. So there was this uncertainty that was hanging in the air. We didn't know, is she better today? Is she worse today? And time felt really warped. I was only there with her 2 days and 2 nights, but it felt like 2 weeks or maybe 2 months. So Michael came out of her room that morning and he said, "Today's the day. Mom decided she's tired of wearing this oxygen, on her nose, and she's through with it." And so we understood what that meant, that, slowly she would lose consciousness without the support of oxygen, and she would probably go into a coma, and then she'd just die. She was on 5 liters of oxygen, which is quite a bit, so that was sustaining her. And so they canceled their work days, and we all sat watch. I sat by her bedside most of the day doing Chenrezig practice and just being present. Mom seemed relaxed. It was clear to me that she had made peace with herself, which I was relieved about. She was ready to die. And, we were able to keep her comfortable with some palliative medicines, just short doses, small doses of medicine. And so she was pretty relaxed most of the day. I had already shared with my sibs the importance of keeping the environment peaceful, and they were completely on board with that. And also I shared with them Venerable's advice, and that seemed to become our mantra for the day, just cinder on with love. So Mom slept most of that morning, and when she was awake, we just kept talking about how much we loved her. And at one point, my brother came in with his iPhone, and he'd found an MP3 of Claire de Lune, which is a piano piece that she often played as I was growing up. And the most beautiful smile just came over her face as we listened to it. And then later he came in and he said, "I know a song you like, Mom. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." My mom's eyes were closed, but without missing a beat, she joined in the harmony. She always sang the alto. That was a very sweet moment. So they say that the best way to help your parents or help anyone to die, or the best way to repay their kindness, is to help them to live an ethical life. And so I'm really happy that when I lived in Australia, I would come back every couple of years, and I had an opportunity to do some teaching in Tulsa while I was there. And so my mom dutifully came to every one of them, and she introduced herself as Seppel's mother. That's my daughter. That's my daughter. So she got imprints about mind and happiness, karma, all about karma, death and dying. She even came to that one. And the last one was about developing compassion. So I was really happy about that. I would also consciously send her cards with Buddhas on them because I knew that they would go on her fridge. And she would see them again and again. She loved David Mitchie's series on the Dalai Lama cats. And, you know, she even said to me, I know these are about Buddhism, but I like them anyway. And so over the years, we had many phone conversations and many Skype video chats. And, you know, I'd try to slip in a little mind training here and there. So I feel happy about that. And also that afternoon, I reminded Mom about the trip that she and I took, the road trip that we took from Tulsa to Bloomington. I think it was 2007. His Holiness was teaching on Atisha's lamp for the path. And so she got the imprints to the entire Lamrim during those 4 days. And she told me then, I don't understand a word he's saying, but I just love listening to him laugh. So that was pretty sweet. And that afternoon, just before she lost consciousness, I had a beautiful picture of His Holiness with me. And I just pulled it out and I said, Mom, look at this. So that was one of the last things that she saw. And I hope that helped her. I also had some things that His Holiness had blessed, and I just put those by her pillow. So about 7 p.m., Mom's breathing was quite shallow, quite soft. And the room seemed to be infused with an unusual light. And time seemed to stop. And it was like a heavenly portal opened and transported us all with Mom right up to the curtain of death. And there was such, it was like we got a glimpse of this expansive peace and expansive love. It was palpable. And as I looked at her, it was abundantly clear to me that there was nothing to cling to. Nothing to cling to, nothing to grasp to. You know, here was this old, aging body. There was love, and there was nothing to cling to. So the three of us each gave her our last words of encouragement. You know, it's okay to go, Mom. We love you. You're safe, and go to the light. And she took her last gentle breath, hardly audible, and she was gone. And so it felt like the last gift that she gave us was this beautiful, peaceful death. Later, my brother, who's a doctor, said, I've seen a lot of deaths, and I've never seen one like that. So Michael and Lisa and I spent the next week cleaning out Mom's apartment, and I was happy that they agreed to donate a lot of her belongings to charity. There was one day shelter for the homeless that we gave a lot of her clothes to. And so that felt good to do. It was a real joyous effort to clean out her apartment. It felt like a real service. And the three of us did some nice bonding over that. I think they would be paying rent on her apartment for another 6 months if I hadn't been there. Yeah. So I'm grateful to the countless people who have made prayers and dedications for my mom's precious human rebirth. And don't forget that my mama was also your mama in many previous lives. And although Mom had a peaceful, positive death, she's still cycling in cyclic existence. And so if I want to continue helping her, if we want to continue helping all our countless mother sentient beings, then we've got to get serious about the Dharma now. And so I'm relieved that my mom died surrounded by people who loved her. That's not been the case for countless beings around the world during this pandemic who died in isolation without the support and presence of their loved ones. And this is a painful thing to think about. So each Christmas at the Abbey, we take time, on Christmas Day, we take time to recite the full text of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And so later today, we will dedicate for all sentient beings, of course, but maybe especially for all those who have died of COVID, and also for their families who are missing them this Christmas, and maybe a special prayer for those who wanted to be there with loved ones and couldn't. And so our hearts go out to all of you who have an empty seat in your home this Christmas. due to COVID or other situations, and know that we hold you in our prayers. So thank you for letting me share my experience with you. And now I'm probably going to go cry. There's a beautiful quote that a friend sent to us. It says, "Memories saturate my heart and the story of you spills from my eyes."